Hi, in this video I'm going to cover 3 more stories in the Thieves World anthology. I'll start by giving a quick synopsis of the beginning of the story. I'll avoid spoilers as much as possible, won't give the whole story away, and then I'll give a few thoughts and a rating. The 5th story in Thieves World is called Shadowspawn and was written by a guy named Andrew J. Offit. I think maybe the Shadowspawn may be the thing he's most famous for in fantasy fiction. Shadowspawn starts off with some comments by a guy named Fertwain Coinpinch. He's a merchant that apparently has seen Shadowspawn, and he goes into some detail about the clothing and the weapons that Shadowspawn wears. Shadowspawn's real name is Hans. Shadowspawn is just a moniker that a lot of people know him as. Hans is actually a rogue that is about 20 years old. He may not be the toughest guy around, but he seems like he knows how to survive. He's the interesting thief that you might want in your own fantasy world, or if you were playing a role-playing game, you might want to be him in that. After the statement by Fertwain, the story jumps to a guy named Kusherlane, who is actually a customs inspector in his main job, but he's doing a second gig at the moment, and he's trying to find Hans so that he can see if Hans would fit the needs for a job that his second employer is looking for. Lorraine is another character in the story. She's actually one of the concubines of Prince Catechethus, who is the governor of Sanctuary. The story actually gets going when Hans and Lorraine get together and discuss something that Lorraine wants Hans to do for her. She basically convinces him to steal something from the prince for her. And since Han hates the new governor of Sanctuary, he agrees to do it. Once he does that, things start to unravel from there. I read the first couple books in the Thieves World series back when I was in my 20s, and I was really looking forward to the reread because I was interested in getting reacquainted with Shadowspawn as a character, since he's one of my favorite characters out there in Sanctuary. Since I'm older now and I've actually tried my own hand at writing, the reread for the first 10 pages or so was a little bit disappointing. It spent a lot of time giving details about Hans and his Shadowspawn nickname that I felt like could have probably been worked into the story a little bit more naturally. That first 10 pages felt like more of an info dump of character details than it did as a natural part of the story. The author does play with the nickname in future stories, since he created it to be Shadowspawn or Shadowspawn. When you look at it, it could be either one. Hans is one of my favorite characters in Sanctuary, and the story's halfway decent. It could be read in probably an hour or so. Despite the clunky start, I'd give this story an 8 out of 10 rating just because I like the character so much. The next story was written by one of the editors, Robert Lynn Asprin. It's called The Price of Doing Business, and it revolves around a character named Jubal, who hasn't made an appearance to this point, but has been mentioned in the 3 previous stories. Jubal is a former gladiator that gained his freedom a long time ago from the rank and arenas, and with the money he got from that, he moved to Sanctuary and became a crime boss. When the story starts, he's at his estate going over business with his lieutenant, who is named Salomon, and Salomon's basically telling him about how they had one of their informants murdered simply because they do that every once in a while just to make sure everybody knows who's in charge and not to mess with Jubal. This is apparently just a normal thing for Jubal's crime organization, and he does it to keep his minions in line, I guess. A brother and sister duo of sellswords named Moram and Moria come into Jubal's chamber where he's talking to Salomon, and they're dragging this little street urchin named Mungo with them. Turns out they caught Mungo on the grounds and they think he was there to steal something. Mungo weaves a tale about having information for Jubal, but Jubal needs to come with him to get the information. Despite his best instincts, Jubal agrees to go with the kid, and then things happen from there. This is the shortest story in the book, and it checks off some of the tropes that you get in a lot of fantasy stories. We have the skilled crime boss and his level-headed lieutenant. We've got the street urchin that can take him to information or help him get information. And the introduction of Moram and Moria also sets up some possibilities for future stories, maybe with those two, maybe with just Jubal. One of the lines in this story I really liked a lot, and it was this: "Money and power, not skill and courage, were what determined one's standing in the social order of men." Like a lot of good fiction, that line reflects the real world as much as it does the fictional world where this story takes place. The story doesn't really have anything surprising in it. There's a little twist at the end, but it's nothing that an astute reader probably won't see coming. The story itself is written better than previous stories because it actually starts at the right place instead of having a bunch of info dump disguised as story. Aspirin feeds the reader what they need to know in the moment and then lets them piece it together from there. Because of its simplicity and the fact that I kind of saw the end coming, I would rate this story a 5 out of 10. Joe Haldeman wrote the next story. He's most famous for writing a novel called The Forever War, which won the Hugo in 1975 and the Locus Award for Best Novel in 1976. If you like science fiction and you haven't read The Forever War yet, you should probably go find a copy and read it. The story is titled Blood Brothers. The story starts right after a dinner party that was given by a guy named One Thumb, who actually owns the Vulgar Unicorn Tavern. One Thumb gets a young noble named Amar to stick around after everybody else has left the party, and once he does that, he drugs the poor guy and does some pretty nasty stuff to him. Stuff that Amar won't survive, and stuff that One Thumb was paid to actually do to the poor guy. Part of his payment for it is a brick of a drug called Kerf. Later, when One Thumb is working at the Vulgar Unicorn again, a woman named Amelie comes in. She's the madam of a brothel called the Lily Guard, and she's got a couple of her bodyguards with her. She tells One Thumb that she also had a brick of Kerf and accuses him of stealing the one that she had. When he takes her back to look at the one he's got, it turns out that his has disappeared as well. One Thumb kind of has a decent idea of who may have either tricked or stolen the drugs from the two of them. This story is pretty good and also starts in the right spot. Haldeman is a really good writer and he gives just the right amount of info. Who One Thumb is shown through the stuff that he does and the actions he takes when certain things happen. And some of the thoughts he has while he's doing these things just deepen his character that much more. This story also establishes a connection between One Thumb, the Vulgar Unicorn, and the Street of Red Lanterns and some tunnels that run underneath. The pacing in the story is done really well and the tension in each scene is noticeable. As I was getting closer to the end, it seemed like the whole thing was going to be tied up, but as I said earlier, Haldeman is an excellent writer and things didn't end where I thought they would. There was more to the story and it led to an interesting ending. I'd give this story a 7 out of 10 and say it's probably one of the strongest in this first volume of the anthology series. So that's it for this video. That's stories 4, 5, and 6 in Thieves World, and that's 4, 5, and 6 out of 97 total stories in the Thieves World setting. Hopefully I haven't given too much away, but I have given you enough to make it so that you want to actually read it yourself. If you have any comments, please leave them below. If you liked my video here, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. And until next time, keep on reading, my friends.